Yeah,
Yep.
we see you.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thanks to the team at Plug and Play for the opportunity to take part in the program and all the corporate partners for being engaged. I hope that you can see my screen and what I'm sharing here, and I hope that William, you can hear me too.
Yes, we can hear you, and we've got a picture of the Grand Farm test site up.
Perfect. Just to give you a bit of background as to sorry, what it is that Agronomeye does is we've heard a lot today around monitoring crops and looking at the fields themselves. At Agronomeye, what we're trying to achieve is looking at the entire farming system. So how can we take a broader look at digitizing agriculture and the effect that these technologies can have, and how can we build up our digital approach to agriculture? So the best way that we thought we could do this was basically share some of the data that you guys have at the Grand Farm, and the way that we're trying to integrate a lot of these data sets and also look at the hydrology of the farm as well. So William, I think that this is a image that you shared with me from about March this year. So long before any crops went in, and obviously long before any development occurred as well. Is there anything you'd like to point out in this image before I sort of start to walk through the demo?
Yeah, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see me, Stu, but we're sitting right here on the Grand Farm. As we look this way, so going down, we're looking out at the wheat fields and the sunflower fields. Yep, if you flip it around, it might actually work better. Yep. As you look out this way with the trees, you've got this river here flowing on the east side of the Grand Farm. So that's just some ways to get some bearings about what's going on here.
Great. Well, I'll turn on some of the other imagery that sort of shows how this this farm developed and the work that you guys have done. So this is from the start of June, and as I roll through these images, you'll start to see some of the change come into effect. So this is an image from the 12th of June. Actually, about 1.5 inches of rain fell just before, so you can see some of the wet spots here. And I'll help just give you some perspective as to what we do by taking it into like a 3D environment. So you can start to see some of the ability to share information and knowledge is pretty extraordinary with some of this technology now as well. So just giving you a storytelling capability as well. So I'll shift back and show you some of the development. So everyone there on site can give you a bit of a virtual tour as well. So this is, yeah, from the original date. And as we toggle through, now we're sort of getting into the middle of June. Obviously you've planted and some of these plots are in place. And then as we've developed through till sort of start of July, you can certainly see some of those plots coming through. We worked with the guys at the Grand Farm as well to get the all the different plots. So as I turn on the plots, we get actually all the information related to the plots. So another, really strong knowledge sharing tool that you can see here. So William, if you've got any insight here as to what you would like to point out or anything in particular that you'd like to look at as I sort of just look at these plots initially.
Yeah, and if you can pull up even just, let's go with plot 17 there, right in the middle. So what was really cool about this project when Stu reached out to us is we are working with the Grand Farm in our project management system about how do we drive collaboration? How do we bring people together? We knew that we had been collecting data from North Dakota State University from the very beginning of the Grand Farm, soil level data, as well as UAV data that would be available on almost a weekly basis. And so what Stu's been able to do is been able to provide the overlay and all the things that we've collected from the mapping, RTK, NVDI, and put that on a longitudinal system so you can look through the entire year. You can zoom in, you can see exactly what's happening and when. And even if we were to click on plot 17 here, some information about what's happening in the plot, what is the size of the plot. We're working with soybeans. They're doing precision sprayer trials that are going on out there that we'll talk about potentially on that tour. But it's just a way to get really tactical about what's happening on the land and what has happened throughout the season. Maybe you didn't remember it rained really heavily or when and things like that.
Yeah, so that's a great point that you make there, is that sort of that ability to be strategic. I will turn off this file just quickly. As I mentioned in my presentation, a lot of what we do is focused on the water and water layer, water modeling technology. So what I'll do now is I'll turn on our water layering tool. And this shows you where the water moves across the entire farming system. So what we're measuring here is the upstream flow of water, or the catchment for any point on the map. So really getting down in the granularity of the farming system to understand where the water moves and what that water movement does in terms of its productivity on the farm. So as I mentioned before, we saw some waterlogging occur on one of the mid dates. And you can see clearly how the water and where it's sitting has lined up with some of these darker spots where there's been some waterlogging occur. Interestingly enough, and Willie, you might have some insight here, you actually don't see a lot of waterlogging down on this on the riverside here. I know that there might be a sort of an underground dam, so to speak, down here, where you clearly see some of the impacts of waterlogging up on the higher parts of the farm, whereas down the lower parts down near the farm, that doesn't really occur. And I'll show you that on the NDVI, but have you got some insight there as to why that is?
Yeah, I don't know if Levi's still here, but Levi was talking. Yep, Levi was talking about from Ellingson some of the drainage issues we have here on the eastern side of the farm. Gravel that was covered up by just a couple feet of dirt, and how that creates a very unique problem on the Grand Farm. The water is seeping underneath. You can see the water. There is no water logging occurring on this eastern part, and it's hitting a matrix underneath the ground that's filtering out the water, but it's got such a downward slope that it's able to flow directly into the river. So a lot of unique problems that can happen there. You're not seeing the water logging, but underneath the ground there's a lot of flow that's occurring that goes right into that river.
I'll turn on some of the NDVI layers as well now, because that certainly helps. And this is some pretty detailed data from, I think it's a drone that you guys have had flying over the farm on that almost weekly basis. So we can see some of the impacts of the waterlogging and how that has affected the performance of the crop in either a good or a bad way. So as I back off some of the water, you can see here there's actually looks like a greater growth in the crop. And when I turn on the water, that was obviously because it got some early water that was able to hydrate that landscape early on. But how that tracks throughout the season will be interesting to watch as well, because that might not necessarily be a good thing as we get later into the season. So as I put on some of the later NDVI dates.
And while you're doing that really quickly, I remember talking to CHS, who's running a lot of these test plots early on. There was a pretty big concern if we were to get enough water for a lot of these trials to do well. Early on, we had a really dry start, and we knew we needed a certain number of inches of rain, and we got that right at the beginning, but these waterlogged areas actually would have probably done better, like you said, at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, is there anything in this NDVI that you sort of see that jumps out at you now when we start to layer the water on top?
I mean, early on, I mean, it's the exact same thing we were talking about here in the middle section. I think that was number 17 earlier, 16, but you're still seeing heavier growth that jumpstart early on. As we move forward, though, I'd be interested to see. I mean, you have this strip to the north, cutting across where you can see that out on the farm. So you'll actually see kind of a divot coming across, but you can actually, it's almost created kind of a dead zone right here. Yep, you got your mouse right in the right spot there, where NVDI is also showing some lack of plant growth, some stunted growth as well due to too much water.
Yeah, and we can clearly demonstrate that and share that knowledge. So you can see that line that runs across the middle there, where that water would flow, where there might be some issue that needs to be rectified, and using this data to determine the impacts of that management strategy or what you should be doing in the future, and then sharing that knowledge in great detail with partners or third parties or whoever it might be that you're looking to work with on the farm. Getting that full picture, I guess, is basically what I'm trying to demonstrate here, is getting the complete picture and the ability to share that information across different stakeholders and get everyone on board as to, you know, what the best remedy might be, or if you're on the right track, how that's kind of coming along. And just the ability to embed images as well. For example, I'll show you, if I can bring it up from in here. This is the middle of the field, and I'm sure you guys have spent a bit of time out there today, but I'm in Sydney, Australia. I can't actually get there at the moment with travel the way it is, but I can certainly get a clear understanding of what it is that you guys are experiencing on the ground by taking a little tour, virtual tour. And I guess that's the tent that you guys are sitting under currently. by just using the platform and the technology that we have to help embed that knowledge. So it looks like what William and the team have done there at the Grand Farm is pretty incredible, going from where they were on day one, which I'll bring up now, all the way to where they are today. So big congratulations to William and the team, and a little bit of a look at what we do at Agronomeye and how that might help in terms of farm management strategies and also sharing information across stakeholders. Thanks, guys.
Dude, thank you so much.